The principle of comparative advantage is sometimes a difficult thing for students to think about, because after all, you get confused between comparative advantage and absolute advantage. Think about absolute advantage in these terms. I'm going to be a father, and so I'm very good at reading. So there's a book here called Alex's Alligator and His Fearsome Jaws. And it has a little alligator, right? I can read through this book very quickly. I can read through these lines much faster than my wife can, right? And so in that sense, since I can read through this book a lot faster than my wife can, I have an absolute advantage in reading this book. In addition, since there's other things that we can do, I'm also very good at repairing things. So I'm very good at using a hammer. Okay? I can hammer more nails and fix more items using my hammer than my wife can in a given time period. So I have an absolute advantage in the production of nailing with my hammer or reading this book here. However, comparative advantage is something different. It's thinking in terms of opportunity costs. In other words, my wife, she can hammer nails into the wall and build things. She can also read the book. But I'm much more efficient, and I give up less time in hammering nails than she does in hammering nails. So I have a comparative advantage, which means it costs me less in terms of what I have to give up in order to be doing the nails. Now, because I'm so good at nails, I have to give up a lot of nails and hardware building to read this book. Whereas my wife, if she's reading this book, doesn't have to give up that many hardware activities in order to read this book. So she has a comparative advantage. In other words, she's giving up less stuff, or in this case the other good or service, than I am. So even though I would have an absolute advantage in the production of both activities, I only have a comparative advantage in one activity. And many times you'll see comparative advantage, one person is never, well, let me correct myself. In comparative advantage, one person, unless they have the exact same opportunity cost, always has a comparative advantage in one item, and then the other person has a comparative advantage in the other item. But with absolute advantage, one person can have an absolute advantage in all the items produced. Remember, absolute is thinking in terms of the most stuff someone can make in a given time, whereas comparative advantage thinks about who has the lowest opportunity cost. So in this way, you can think of why do some people specialize at what they do. In other words, I'm an economist, so I spend all my time teaching and thinking about economics rather than hauling trash. Why? When you have a comparative advantage in something, that's what people tend to specialize in. In other words, I spend all my time on economics and I pay for someone else to haul the trash. Or, if you think about it differently, I'm not that great at mathematics and physics, so we pay people at NASA to send rockets to the moon. They're much smarter than I am, do much more important things than I do, and I just teach my economics. So as you go through your college careers, what you're really looking for is not what you have an absolute advantage in, but what you have a comparative advantage in. And what you have a comparative advantage in tends to be what you specialize in producing. I hope this video vignette helps. As always, I'm reachable by email with any questions you might have.